I was like, man, I really want to teach people so I don't have to watch bad drifting. and and somebody was like, that's so rude. I'm like, no, like I don't mean it like in a bad way. I'm like, these people that are struggling on the track, I could probably talk to them in 5 minutes and like help them through a year of learning, you know? I'm like, and I feel like if everybody's better at drifting, drifting can grow, right? Because if everybody can link a track and have style and do that, that means anytime someone goes to watch them, they're going to absorb good drifting. And I think that's important in the growth of it. For me, what the best part about current drifting is someone could start drifting that has never drifted in their life, and in about 5 events they can be better than I was in 10 years.
Wow.
Which is like incredible to see, you know. Wow. Like some people be like, man, I had to fight through this, and I'm like, no, this is amazing. Like, it has grown so much that someone can get in a car that is set up pretty decent, has all the right parts, and there's enough education out there where they can watch some videos, go to the track, and by 5 events they're gonna be shredding out there. But on the other end, I still really like the older BMW stuff, 90s, early 2000s.
Those were the best, aren't they, for drifting?
Yeah, and the driving experience of those, even in drifting, is unreal. It's so good. To me, there's not a better car to just get in and drive and drift, and the feel of it and the setup and how well it works, than like the E36 and E46 chassis. What's up, everybody? I'm Chelsea DeNofa, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
We've had a lot of guests on this program. This is the first guest who has drifted his way into the program, quite literally. He's the first drifter. Welcome into Cars and Culture, Chelsea.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show. If there's anything that is I find culturally fascinating, and I have drifted before, so yeah, you and I have drifted. But boy, the rich culture of drifting. I have to start though. What are you doing in your retirement phase? Because
Well,
you don't old enough to retire.
Yeah, no, for sure. I really just pulled back and retired from Formula Drift, which is like the highest series of drifting worldwide, to focus on other things in drifting. I think that I kind of have been doing it for 20 years and focused on it. And I think there's more out there for me to enjoy with drifting, and kind of pulling back. So lots of different lifestyle style events, doing some content creation that's fun, and kind of doing, for the last 20 years, I've made a Rolodex of things that I want to do before I'm done driving. And I'm like, man, I have 20 years of that stuff too. So I better start getting onto it, you know?
How difficult was it for you to decide that you wanted to step back a little bit?
It was tough. Obviously, for a long time, it was what I knew, and it was a big part of my life. But then I just started being able to kind of see other things in drifting and motorsports, and kind of growing and understanding what it was. So when I kind of made the decision, it was quick. It was like, okay, this is my last season. I kind of started talking to everybody behind the scenes and aligning some things, and kind of moved forward with it and didn't look back, if that makes sense. Finished the season, ended up winning the championship, which was like the fairy tale ending to it all.
The only way to do it. It's the only way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I kind of did it because I knew how to, if that makes sense. Like, I'm like, this is going to be my last year. I'm just going to win it. And that's how it is. You know, drifting's a bit of a judged sport, so it's not just about being the fastest around the track. So you kind of have to decide to strategize and make the most of it. And previous years, I had just tried to drive harder and harder every lap, and better than my last lap every lap. And I quickly realized that, like, by lap 3 or 4, like, you could just stay here and probably have the best odds to win. But my history being in skateboarding and BMX and whatever, you do the next biggest trick, you do the next biggest thing. And I would drive so hard that none of it was rewarded at that point, because I was past the point of it. So kind of just decided it and moved forward with it.
Did the championship solidify the fact that, okay, because I've won, it just makes all of this much easier, or did it actually make it harder?
For me, it made it easier, that I probably don't have to go back. I'm like very competitive. So if I didn't win, I probably would have been like, we got to do this again. Maybe not this year or the next year, but I'm going to have to go back and win, because if I didn't. But It's not that I would never go back. I just, like I said, it's for me, it did solidify it enough that I have other things that I'm enjoying and loving and kind of growing and drifting.
So let's talk about drifting for those listeners who aren't as familiar with it. Give me a little bit of a 101, and I will go into your history, but tell me first just about drifting in general and what is it that's so appealing and why, yeah, why the world loves drifting?
I think because it's the most obtainable motorsport, if that makes sense. It's similar to even drag racing. You can have a fairly simple car and go to the track and enjoy it. And you don't have to be the fastest and you don't have to be the wildest. You can just get out and enjoy it. But it's a bit more like flashy and like social media excitement than drifting or than drag racing. Because obviously you're sliding the car sideways. To most like normal people, the drag racing thing is just a straight line. I know very well it's not that, and it's very, very difficult in the long run of things. But just the average Joe, and they see somebody drifting, it's like, wow, look at what they're doing. Where drag racing is like, how fast did they go? That's all. That's all I want to see. How fast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, well, so for me, I believe that it's obtainable. Like for a couple grand, you can have a car, and everywhere in the U.S. now they have drifting almost every weekend within 100 miles of you. And you can go and just drive and have fun. And the culture of it, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, is huge. Like it's not about who's better. It's about how we can make drifting better. And that's kind of everybody's mindset. When you go to the track, every person there in the pit is helping the other person. If they're struggling with a technical part or they're struggling with driving, there'll be a number of people just come over and just kind of help because it's like kind of like the extreme sport thing. Everybody wants it to grow. It's in a phase where it's exploding, it's huge, and we haven't lost that yet, which is amazing. And I think that's like a inviting culture to a lot of people. And kind of what separates it too is just how it is a judge sport, and there's a lot of like kind of quarrels going on with everything on what drifting really is, especially right now in the pivotal time of hitting the 20-year mark in the US of growing it and doing that. And yeah, to answer your question short, I think there's just a lot happening and there's a lot to learn all the time. And I think that entices people, especially ones that are into something like that.
Yeah, it's an incredible the 2 decades that you reference. It's an incredible curve that the sport has been on. And I guess to your point, accessibility makes that much better, but it's also global too, which a lot of people don't realize. And the fact is, you've been drifting in 10 countries? Do I read that right?
Yeah, just about. I've kind of lost track. It's been a lot of fun, and drifting's given me the opportunity to go visit those places too, which is awesome.
Yeah. Latvia, Australia. Australia was where I first heard about it because it had become such an enormous sport in Australia. Give me kind of walk me around some of the places that you've been and the popularity and how it varies from one continent or one country to the next.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So you were just mentioning Australia. Australia has some of the best drifters I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
I have friends from there that I'm like, if you came over and drove Formula Drift like in a year or so, you'd be making a huge impact over here. Just their different styles, they're more aggressive, and they have a more heavily like Japanese inspired vibe over there. Um, and yeah, just overall, Australia, their vibe is very like fun, but they also have a very high competitive side that is really competitive. Their style and their aggression is really high. In Europe, it's a little bit more of like a finesse and a really grippy tire series over there. Rather than having a chassis that's like super hooked up and moving around a lot and creating a lot of traction with the chassis, they do it with the tire. So the visual part of the drifting looks very different. The cars are pretty flat and a little more controlled, and their speeds are sometimes like a more linear style. And then like America is more of like the hammer of drifting, lots of chassis movement, lots of grip in that action, big tracks, lots of speed. And usually we get to see a little bit more of a melting pot of drivers in the States because of Formula Drift being one of the highest tiers. Everybody wants to come over and drive in the States. Plus, I think the US probably has the most events per weekend over any other country, I'd imagine. I don't know for a fact, but I know being here, I could get in my truck on Thursday and drive to an event no matter where I want, anywhere in the country, and there would be drifting.
What amazing to think about. You mentioned Japanese. Of course, I don't have to say the words Drift King to you
Yeah.
for you to not know who that is. But tell our audience about, and I'm probably will mispronounce his name, but is it Keiichi Tsuchiya? Do I have that
Yeah,
correct?
Tsuchiya. Yep.
Okay, who is known as the Drift King in Japan, and what kind of boost did the Drift King give to the sport?
Yeah, so he was one of the first people to really take the step and make it mainstream and kind of relate it to other forms of motorsport. He did a lot of road racing over there and some other things as well. I don't know the whole biography, but obviously I've looked up and followed a lot of his videos and can give you the background. He was one of the first people to start creating content and videos back on VHS back in the 90s. There's videos of him drifting stuff, even I think back into the late 80s
Right.
with Corollas and the AE86 chassis. Everybody calls him the Drift King. I am more of like, he's the momentum king. When you watch him drive, everything he does has like this very, very smooth, flat speed of momentum. You know, goes into a tight turn, it's like this very slow down speed and very slow back up. Like it's very like nice to watch. I was having a conversation with one of my other Formula Drift buddies the other day, and I think drifting has become a little bit more choppy over the years because of all the grip and the horsepower and unlimited pretty much everything in that aspect. Whereas when I watch some of these videos of Tsuchiya and some of these older drivers back in the 90s and early 2000s, they don't have a lot of angle, they don't have a lot of power, but like the art of it is like so much more like smooth and pleasant to watch. So I've actually been building a lower horsepower fun car on the side to kind of enjoy that and be in that nostalgia aspect of it.
It's crazy. Some might not know that Sterling Moss did some drifting back in the 1950s. And outside of you, Chelsea, who are Americans who have really put drifting on the map?
My previous teammate Von Gittin Jr., he's definitely done huge amounts for the drifting community, just by growing it in a mass, you know, huge. He's done a fantastic job of marketing it. He's also one of the best drivers. We always have a joke where if he pulled up to the line next to me in like an F350, I would be concerned because he can get in anything and wheel it to the podium. And I'm like, how do you do this? Like his car could be all messed up from a crash or whatever, and I feel like he drives better than when it's perfect. And I think it's his positivity and what he's done for drifting has grown it immensely, especially. And I don't mean to get corporate, but especially in the business side of things and growing it in ways to kind of pave the way for other drivers and other people that are fighting the dream to be able to be successful at it.
Well, you don't mean to get corporate, but let me ask just a couple of corporate questions. And then I do want to get into a 101 on drift competition. How much is the sport changing from a business side since you got into it?
A ton. Realistically, when I started, we were just figuring out how to do the sport. Even at a professional level, if you go back and watch videos from 20 years ago plus, it's almost embarrassing because it's not the driving was not very good. And from a corporate standpoint, I think there were a couple drivers that maybe had some background in that and were able to really maximize the fact that it was new. And someone like Reese Millen or Tanner Faust, some of those drivers in the beginning. And they did. They kind of set it up so that corporate partners would want to be involved. And the thing is, like we were talking about earlier with how big drifting is, there's a side of drifting that's just like skateboarding, BMX, street riding, things like that, that is fully like sustainable on its own without a lot of corporate partners. And that's like what's great about drifting is if that's not what you're into, there are outlets. And then to compete and be professional, no matter what, there's going to have to be that. That's just how it is. It gets more expensive. You become someone who is marketable and able to grow everything. And you start working with these partners to be able to fund your dream. And then hopefully after a while, you can make some money doing it, you know? But it's been a big change lately. I think there's been some big partners that have come in and out of drifting and then back in because they realize what it is, the value of it. But at the end, like currently, I think we're at a spot where there's a really good balance of the ability for small business and other things to get involved in the best end and the highest end of drifting. Well, it still makes a lot of sense to have some of these really huge corporate companies come in and be a part of it as well.
Who wants to be a part of it now?
I think people that really want to reach the 16 to 35 market that's into cars and has disposable income. I think that's obviously like the huge market and target for a lot of companies. And this is a way to do it in a way that's like kind of fancy and exciting and it's eye candy. There's so many technical facets of it if you have a company that's based around that. And then there's just raw in your face action happening. And I think a lot of these companies, and I'm not speaking for them, but they like one of my partners, Pennzoil, they can't post some wild, crazy trip that we're doing, having fun and doing all that like from their social, but I can,
Right.
and I can promote
Yep.
Pennzoil through that, right? And I'm connecting my followers and my people that love what I'm doing with a brand that appreciates and really respects what I'm doing. So it's like that's the connection I want to make all the time, where it's like, how can I be the middleman to connect the people that you would like to have, but you're a corporate at a big, huge company, and that's a
Right.
struggle. So let me help you with that because I love your brand. I love working with you, and all the people that work there are enthusiasts. But let me be the non-corporate version of this to connect you guys with all of my fans that enjoy it.
You mentioned social. I'm guessing drifting, judging by the actions of, teens or young adults, social is exactly the way to go to make this sport as popular as it can possibly be. How much has that fueled everything in the last decade or more, that you've been actively involved?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
I bet.
Um, I believe that drifting would be nowhere almost without it.
Mm,
I think that if we look back to pre-social, you had to really love it and know it and want to buy tapes and videos from Japan or Australia or any of these places, or go on LimeWire and download it.
yep.
And that was the only real media we had. And I can tell you the group of people that I was around drifting all the time were diehard, but it was just very few, and there was very few new people coming in. And when social media started coming around, Facebook started opening up, and Instagram, you could see
TikTok.
the growth just go to the moon, because it's an eye candy sport. And now everybody can post it. The 5,000 people that are there at the event turn to 10,000 in a couple of years because they see it on social and they're nearby, and the marketing and all the stuff just grew like in a massive way.
That's crazy. Well, let's talk about a typical competition. And I know that you mentioned judging a couple of times. That takes place, correct me if I'm wrong, but on a small part of the circuit with a few linking corners, right, that provide for good viewing and then opportunities to drift. But the rest of the circuit, not as important, but it does help control temperature of the tires and setting up the car for that judging that occurs in the corner. Do I have that right?
Yeah, somewhat. Some of the places we use all of it. Like
Okay.
Irwindale Speedway, it's a bank. We use the big bank and the small bank and the infield. It's the road courses usually that we use part of, and it's a start and finish. And you do come to a stop every time before you restart the run. But yeah, basically the competition aspect of it. There's a seating bracket now that's based on the previous event and where you are in the standings, and that basically places you in a bracket. You'll have practice usually for about 4 hours or so of track time previous to that. And this is the competition aspect side of it, not the fun side of it. But
Yeah, right.
not that they both can't be fun. But yeah, so basically, the strategy is, or the layout is, you lead one run as a driver, and then you'll chase one run, and that the judges will decide who wins. There's usually three judges. Some of the other series have brought in up to five, just so that it's a little bit more easy to make decisions on that aspect. But it's your job as a lead car driver to do a 100-point run the best it can be. If you don't do that, they deduct you from that. And in the chase position, it's your job to basically mimic what the lead car is doing and their ability to do that. Obviously, a really, really good lead should make a really, really good chase. A so-so lead can make a so-so chase. So you can see where the judging gets a little bit difficult and complex there. but they have a basically large string of things that they're looking for, and they're deciphering what's happening on what car affects each, and then you decide a winner. Most tracks in Formula Drift are 2 to 5 turns. Some of the 2 turn tracks are really actually huge tracks, and we wouldn't make it much more than 2 turns on a pair of tires. And some of the 5 or 6 turn tracks are usually smaller, so that we can actually make it through the 2 laps. And yes, it is tough to get 2 laps out of a pair of tires.
And the level of smoke is also judged, correct?
The level of smoke isn't really judged unless it's in a part where you're not making smoke and you should, and then it kind of tells them if you're on or off the throttle. But the level of smoke becomes a huge difficulty from the chase, because you're sometimes driving through a complete whiteout, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you have to have the precision being right on their door. And, it gets to be tough. For me, I usually will take some laps during practice in the lead in spots where you can get what we call like smoked out. And I'll just close my eyes and count and open them to make sure I'm where I'm supposed to be. So that way, during the run, if I do get smoked out, I actually usually have more context to what's happening than my eyes being closed. So
right.
It's okay to drive through it and have your timing at that point.
You started this before you had a driver's license, right?
Yep.
And tell me about how you started. Was it 15 years old?
Yeah, so I got into drifting by kind of watching some videos online and playing some video games that were related to that. And when I was 15, like right after my birthday, I found a Nissan 240SX for like $1,200, and I was like asking my parents, I'm like, "Hey, I have a permit." Like I couldn't drive by myself, right? But I had a permit to drive, and I was like, "I want to get a car, so that way when I have my driver's license, I have this sweet car." And like I had no idea like what I was getting myself into. And basically I got this car and I started drifting a little bit here and there with friends that were old enough to sit in the passenger seat in case I did get pulled over or whatever the case was. And then I started driving some events, and I had to have like my mom drive with me to the track so that I could drift all day and then come home, because I didn't like have a license I could drive by myself. So it was interesting. It was cool. Like there were a lot of people that were very young back then that were getting into drifting and doing similar, because it was like obviously spending $1,200 on a car and like a couple $100 an event is still a lot back then for a kid. But like if you just did a couple events a year, it was really enough because there weren't that many. You know, my local area would have like maybe 5 events all year. So even if you went to all of them, like, and you had like a job and did your chores and whatever, you could stack up a little bit of money enough to go do it. And you could go dumpster dive for some tires at the local tire shop and mount them with your mechanical arms and do all that to make it happen. But yeah, the beginning of the drift scene was definitely definitely early in it all. It was much simpler. Like if you could go and do a figure 8, you were basically a pro back then.
Right. Amazing. And you were also doing stunt driving at an early age like that?
Yeah, after I got into drifting and realized that I could drive, there actually was a market for like young kids that could drive, right? So I started doing some movie stuff and commercial stuff. That was, yeah.
Like what?
I did a couple different things. I did a commercial for Hot Wheels back in the day, and like because I was at an age where like a 16-year-old could still have Hot Wheels and be playing with them, but also drive, and they were trying to reach a market like that. And some other smaller things, just little clips and handbrakes in smaller movies. And basically, whenever I could, I was always trying to go online and find on Craigslist and stuff and find little jobs driving,
Isn't that just the best thing? You're not even 20 years old, and you're hanging out with your buddies, and they go, "Well, what'd you do this weekend?" "Well, I went and drove a car off a cliff or something." I mean,
yeah. Most of my stuff was like precision driving back then.
Okay.
I wasn't the guy jumping Crown Vics out of hotel buildings or anything like
Right.
that. But yeah, like just fun things in that nature were always a lot of fun, and did some road racing back then too, which I think kind of helped tie that all together.
And you got certified. That was the big thing, right? I mean, you got your pro racing license and started racing in several series. Primarily that road racing path, right?
Yeah, and for me, I was actually working at a dealership that sold Miatas and diesel trucks. Oddly, the two
Ah,
odd things. And but he raced Spec Miata forever, and he's like, "You got to come race. You got to come race." I'm like, "Well, I think I could get a license and do all that." So like, he rented me a car, and I went and got a SCCA pro or novice permit, and then went and did some racing at Sebring, at it would have been Moroso back then, but then PBIR and Road Atlanta and some events nearby that I kind of got, the thrown into the wolves with Spec Miata, which is like one of the craziest road race series and the most aggressive and closest racing you can have. I think some of the best drivers come out of there. But that kind of gave me also some help with other things. Like, I have a SCCA pro license. It's not easy to get, but it's possible. You don't have to be the best driver to get it. You got to be safe and you got to do what you need to do. But it shows that like you're a part of this and you're a lifer to motorsports. So I think that helped a lot in some of my partnerships and drifting, even just because it's a relatable thing that shows that like I'm here to stay, kind of thing.
these days you're still involved in teaching, correct?
Yeah, I do a lot of instruction, chassis setup, engineering, things of that nature. I feel like one of my purposes in drifting is to kind of give back and grow drifting through education. And I think part of it was funny. One day, like 15 years ago, I was like, man, I really want to teach people so I don't have to watch bad drifting. and and somebody was like, that's so rude. I'm like, no, like I don't mean it like in a bad way. I'm like, these people that are struggling on the track, I could probably talk to them in 5 minutes and like help them through a year of learning. I'm like, and I feel like if everybody's better at drifting, drifting can grow, right? Because if everybody can link a track and have style and do that, that means anytime someone goes to watch them, they're going to absorb good drifting. And I think that's important in the growth of it. Obviously, it's important to learn as well, but I started doing these YouTube series and some online instruction and going all over the US teaching these clinics whenever I was like kind of in an area already, and kind of just growing and sharing what I learned over the past 20 years. For me, what the best part about current drifting is, someone could start drifting that has never drifted in their life, and in about 5 events they can be better than I was in 10 years,
Wow.
which
Wow.
is like incredible to see. Like
Wow.
some people be like, man, I had to fight through this. And I'm like, no, this is amazing. Like, it has grown so much that someone can get in a car that is set up pretty decent, has all the right parts, and there's enough education out there where they can watch some videos and go to the track, and by 5 events they're gonna be shredding out there. They may not be able to win an event or tandem or know the details of it, but they'll be able to link a track and look really good doing it.
We've talked to IndyCar drivers and NASCAR drivers on this program about video games and how much video games have led the way. Sims, frankly, have simulators changed the way that young folks who you deal with are able to drift faster? Is it just do they have an upper hand because of that?
I think that it's helped a lot in some aspects of drifting. I think it's disconnected some of them. So in the positive side of it, you get to drive any track you want anywhere in the world with all of your friends at any moment. Like in 5 minutes, you can load that up, and that's like amazing. Because if I want to go do that in real life, we're talking a whole marketing plan, a car getting shipped somewhere or finding one, doing all this. So that's a really cool experience to be able to enjoy. The other side of it that's good is the rhythm, the timing, and the understanding of it is translated pretty well. So like handbraking, positioning of the car, working the footwork and the steering, for the most part, is accurate enough that it translates really quickly to a real car.
Yeah.
What's weird about drifting, and it's always been the cool thing to me of how it evolves nonstop, is like when you're racing for a time or you're racing for, against people, like there's a thing where the car with 2 horsepower or 3 horsepower actually makes a big difference, and there's a thing where you have another lap out there, like to improve upon, so you have a 50, 100, a 300 lap race, whatever it is, you can make some mistakes every lap and still win. And you have a quantifiable understanding of the dynamic of the car because it's leaning, it's pitching, it's rolling, it's doing that. But in drifting, it's like a very skew, weird yaw relation of things. It's the chassis setup is very, very different. The only thing that's even remotely close is like dirt circle track because there's wheel spin and you're leveraging the car and you're steering the opposite direction. So I think the games haven't quite gotten that yet. And I hope they do, but I feel like it's a pretty big disconnect on like the feel and the relationship of it. Cause I can't even drift on a sim. I'm not any good. And
Oh,
I've tried.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried. And I teach a lot of sim kids to get back on topic. I teach a lot of sim kids how to drift. And I've found like 5 or 6 things that I can teach them immediately that connect them to the car because most of them are scared at first because of the G forces and the feel of it. And it's actually happening. Oh shit, I can't crash,
Yeah.
like
Right. Right.
things along that. Like, and it's cool though because I see the growth of it, and I just have to break some habits. And I hope that the feel of the sim stuff comes back around. I think in road racing, like when I road race in a sim, I'm pretty good. I'm not amazing, but like I'm there. I could be mid pack against whoever, and we're okay. But in drifting, and I've spent some time. I still struggle big time in that.
Interesting. Are the drivers in the next generation, are they just getting younger and younger like they are in other racing series?
There's definitely some. I mean, I think it's just the mass amount of people that are involved. I think that you see that, and I think you
Yeah.
see sometimes where there is now in the last couple of years there is a clear career path where it's possible to have this be funded and maybe make a career out of it. There's very few
Yeah.
that are doing it, but I think
Right.
that helps when a kid is like, "Oh, I really want to be a drifter," or "I really want to do this motorsport," and they're pretty good at it, and maybe they come from a background that has some funding, and they're like, "This is what I want to spend the effort at." I think previously, like maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago, that outlet wasn't there. It was everybody was still fighting to be able to make some money doing it, enough to like keep doing it and live it and have it be a career. I think there's a more clear path of that. So we see some younger people be coming in and having some support from either their family or their partners from another sport or whatever the case might be.
Well, funding, that's always the key, but and that's what prevents so many from getting into other forms of racing. But maybe this is an affordable way to for the path forward, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, like, obviously a pro program might be $1 million a year to run, maybe, but there's a lot of drifting out there that is insanely affordable. And lately, I've been driving some of those events and having fun and doing some competition stuff where I built this early 90s Mustang Fox body with a current EcoBoost engine. So it's got a stock like motor out of a 2016 Mustang.
Right.
And I built it to be extremely light and extremely simple. And the only thing was like, how do I beat everybody with a car that costs like $10,000? And that was like the build, right? And it's probably up to about 15 or 20,000 over the last couple of years. But it is definitely capable. We've gone places, we've won with it, and everybody looks at it and they're like, this is so simple. There's nothing done to it. And I'm kind of like bringing that back where it's like, hey, you don't have to build a Formula Drift car when you just want to drive for fun because I'm here spending $500 a day and having a blast and winning the event while you spend 5,000. So kind of like bringing that ability for other people and the belief of it so that they can come and enjoy drifting and not have this huge massive budget. And maybe it can just be a hobby, but you can still win and compete.
Electric vehicles. What's your take, Chelsea? How does it affect drifting going forward?
I don't think it affects drifting at all. I think that I wouldn't mind having a bunch of electric cars out there in competitive drifting or fun drifting. One thing that I think the best part of it is the simplicity in terms of the mechanicals. Like obviously there's some high level tuning and electrical and all that going on in electrification, but there's a lot less moving parts and it's a much simpler scenario
Right.
than what we're usually dealing with. So that part I'm heavily behind because seat time and enjoying and driving and having fun without having to do work on the car every 2 or 4 or 6 laps is huge for me in the accessibility aspect of it. But like as an emotional thing, it's not it for me. It's one of
Mm.
those things where like I wouldn't say that I'm like married to all the noise and all of that, but the feel of it and the understanding of the power band and like the tuning aspect of it and having multiple gears and like I think some of the electrification removes that sensitivity and excitement from it. But that's me. You know, I think there is a place for it. I don't think it'll ever replace what we're doing, not in my lifetime at least.
Hmm.
Especially in drifting. But yeah, you can't argue the fact that like I'm always trying to find the biggest power band and the longest the make the most amount of power for the most amount of RPM when like an electric motor would solve every problem I ever had with that, you know.
Sure. Exactly.
I'd
Yeah.
love to build an assist car that had electric assist for like the lower end RPM.
Yeah. What do you have in your own personal stable? I know you've had a bunch of different rides. You posted a video on YouTube about your grandma's Miata. You know what do you? Wait, your grandmother drove a Miata, by the
She
way.
still does. Yeah, I just got her
Oh,
one a
good
couple
for
months ago.
her.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've got a lot of weird stuff. I like buying, enjoying, and then selling to be able to purchase something else that's fun and enjoyable. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that throughout their life, just kind of moving car to car and seeing what happens. But for drifting stuff, I'm all about building stuff that's different and exciting and kind of pushes the envelope with things. But on the other end, I still really like the older BMW stuff, 90s, early 2000s,
Those were the
because to
best,
me,
weren't they, for drifting?
yeah, and the driving experience of those, even in drifting, is unreal. It's so good. To me, there's not a better car to just get in and drive and drift, and the feel of it, and the setup, and how well it works than like the E36 and E46 chassis. Um, but I've built some fun stuff. I just built a 718 Porsche drift car that has a 2.5 turbo in it, and it's only like about 400 or so horsepower. But it's been really reliable and a lot of fun to drive and develop the chassis. Maybe there's a future in that in some more competitive things. I'm not sure yet. But just building something mid-engine that entices and excites me, and we get to try new things and learn a lot about it, is really fun. And then obviously, I've had a huge success in the Mustang, being such a good motorsports vehicle in that aspect. Won the championship in the S650, which is the current gen Mustang, with the help of RTR, and then had a lot of success in the last like 6 or 7 years with the previous gen S550. Great car out of the box, lots of power, does what it needs to do, and really like versatile, kind of a Swiss Army knife of drifting. Yeah, and then outside of that, so go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, outside of that, yeah.
Yeah, outside of that, for fun cars, I just have weird stuff. Like I have a
Yeah, you
'69
do.
Alfa Romeo GTV. That's
Yeah.
like that was my dream car. Like I always wanted one of those. I felt like they're so cool looking, and they're so like they keep it simple, stupid mentality. They're very effective car, and fun. And I have a Miata. You always have to have a Miata. I feel
Right.
like I feel like they're the most fun you can have in a car normally without getting in trouble everywhere you go. So
Yeah. That's true.
it's the only car you can floor it from every light and probably not get pulled over, and smile while you're doing it the whole
That
time.
or a Honda S2000, right?
Yeah, that's 2002, but they're like kind of fast, right?
Yeah, they are
And they're
fast.
kind of flashy. You know, I
Hmm.
feel like when
That's
an
true.
officer sees you ripping away from a light in a Miata, you're like, I'll just let him go. But S2000, they might come after you.
That's true.
But yeah, just enjoying cars in general. I've got a list of things I want to own before I kick the bucket, and it's kind of been buy and sell and enjoy that aspect of it. You know,
Do the last call Dodges appeal to you at all? Those final
no,
versions of it? No. Okay. All right.
they appeal to me because they're very muscle car and they're
Right.
ridiculous. Like I
Yep.
love the ignorance of it. I absolutely do. But on the other end, like I'm
Hellcat.
more about the experience and the enjoyment, and they're just too much of a hammer, if that makes sense. Like,
Absolutely, they are. I've been in the
yeah,
I've been in the Hellcat, and I've driven a lot of stuff. I've been to Bondurant a couple of times. You can't keep them on the road. I mean, that's the problem.
yeah, they're nuts. Yeah, you'd think being a drifter like that would be ideal for me, right? Just
But it's
press the
not.
gas and blow the tires up. But I think because I'm like I do that 30 weekends a year, when I get in a car, I want like a more refined flooring experience, and I feel like those cars are really big, really heavy, and have lots of power. And
Yeah.
I totally get it. But for me, like I'm more in the, like I said, I have the Alpha that makes like 100 horsepower, and that I'm like smiling, bebopping around in it. It's more my style.
Do kids want to? You've already answered this, but I want to ask the question again. Kids want to drive, don't they? This whole notion of no driver's licenses and parked on their phones and stuff like that. They want to drive.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I feel like when I started hearing that, like, oh, people aren't getting licenses, people aren't like driving, kids aren't into driving, I'm like, this is some weird thing that you're trying to push right now because I know kids. I've never
Yeah,
met a kid in my life that wouldn't be like, I want to be a race car driver at some point if I had the opportunity, like,
absolutely.
yeah, kids are into cars. I mean, I see it every day when I'm at the track. There's, for every adult that's there, there's a kid there pretty much. And they're all loving it and enjoying it. And, it's a place where they're not shy because there's so much sensory overload going on at a drift event. And you get to see the kids smiling and having fun and enjoying it. I think that the average child growing up is going to be, no matter what, into some sort or be excited when they see cool cars or motorsports.
No,
I mean, I don't think that's ever going to change.
no, you're right. You're right. Final thing or two here. You
Yeah.
had Pennzoil as a partner for a long time, and I wondered whether you could share some of the work that you're doing with them. And I know summer's pretty much over now, unfortunately, Chelsea, but you've got some summer car care tips that you want to share.
Yeah. So I've been working with Pennzoil for 5 or 6 years now. It's been an awesome experience with them. Just the support that I can get from them and what they're into. Like I'm like, hey, I have this really cool idea. Like I feel like you guys could fit into this. Like we did an Evo giveaway this year through Pennzoil and
Mhm.
AutoZone, and I see a lot of giveaways happening. And it clicked to me like, we're working with AutoZone and Pennzoil and stuff, but we're giving away like new cars all the time. Like, I don't. Most people that are into cars are buying 5, 10, 15-year-old cars, right? And a new car doesn't really always need parts from AutoZone. Wipers, air fresheners, cleaning products. There's definitely stuff for you, but like I want to give away like a '90s Japanese car because I feel like that's it fits my market well. And they're like, duh, we need to do that. Let's do it. And bam, like this whole plan came out. I got to build this really cool Evo 5 RS, which ended up being one of my favorite cars that I had no idea was going to be. Um, and we're able to give that car away through AutoZone
Nice.
and Pennzoil, which was cool. And just in the motorsports end of things, hey, I have this really cool project. I think there's a play in Long May We Drive, which is kind of a campaign going on right now. And I'm like, I'm always driving, I'm always going places, and I think that that's an important thing. Like the Long May We Drive campaign kind of fits my personality and my life really well. Like there's no reason not to just get in your car and go for a drive. You find, I'm sure everyone watching this finds an excuse to go buy something at a store or go to lunch or do something and take their car to go drive there,
Yep.
or aimlessly drive around and enjoy the scenery in your car and what it has to offer. So I feel like that's a really important thing to embrace with cars nowadays. And we also see very eye to eye with that. But yeah, the summer car care tips is just some things I was thinking about, being that I've been into cars and doing things for 20 years, some things I've learned. One thing being I've owned some cars for a long time that have had paint issues, and I've always been like, living in Florida, the UV is crazy, especially where you're at. It's like,
Absolutely. Yep.
it's a big thing to make sure you wash your car, wax it. If you have the ability or you're going to have that car for a long time, doing some sort of ceramic coating goes a long way. Like you can keep a finish forever, even if it's red in Florida, if you take care of it. I see all the time cars that are only 6, 7 years old and they're all faded and the
Fade
paint's
it out.
falling off them already. And I'm like,
That's
it's
right.
got to be because they just never washed it. Like it
Yeah,
just let it,
exactly.
it's, so that's one thing. And obviously it gets really hot in the summer. So if you have pets or anything in your car, make sure you have the AC on for them all the time. Leave them at home if you're going to go into the store for more than a couple minutes, like make sure the AC is on in your car. If you leave them and you have a way to lock it, it goes from 70 to 130 degrees in the car in about 10 minutes. So that's not going to happen. Can't have that. Can't have the dog or any of your animals or your child. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Like
right,
I still see stories about that. I'm like,
God,
are you nuts?
I know.
I don't even, it's wild. Yeah, other things too, interior stuff like light window tint, ceramic things, keeps the seat cool. I think there's little tips there like that are huge. Like, it costs 150 or $200 to tint your windows. And I think over the years of 5 years of owning a car and not sitting in a seat that burns your legs or butt or whatever is huge. Keeping the temperatures down, making your AC work less. It's a big deal. And then oil. I mean, one thing that I have learned over the past 10 years or so, being a bit more scientific with everything, is that like there's not one oil for one car for all the time, the oil that I run in Florida when it's never colder than 75 degrees is not the same oil that is even recommended from the manufacturer when you live in the Northeast or Alaska or any of these places. You'll definitely have a heavier oil be required in a hot state, Arizona, any of these places versus up north. So check out your manual and go get Pennzoil Ultra Platinum for that. So that way you can have longer oil change intervals, better quality oil, and not be so worried every time you take your car to the rev limiter. That's my whole thing is a lot of people I know that are into cars, they still shift at 5,000 RPM when they're having fun. And I'm like, you don't even have red till 7,000. Like, oh, I'm worried about it. I'm like, it was built for it. Have good oil, enjoy your car and use it,
Wonderful.
For sure.
He is the mechanical empathizer, as his Instagram says. I think I just became the follower number 380,000. Chelsea, you're the first drifter on this show. You're number one on this show. So thank you for being with us. Thanks for taking us through the world of drifting, which is its own car and culture, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. I had a blast. You had some great questions, and hopefully together we can help grow the sport of drifting and everything you guys have to offer as well.
Enjoy retirement.
Yeah. Everybody keeps saying that to me, and I'm like, I'm not actually retired. I just stopped driving professional Formula Drift,
Yeah. Well, you look like you're about 25 still, so,
Oh, perfect. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Chelsea.
All right. I'll see you guys.